I can't actually see you because of the light. Thanks for granting me this honor. I'm Willan Meier. Today, I'd like to start this presentation with a common quote. The present is made of the past and the future. You might have read, seen, heard of this quotation, overheard, overseen, overread this quotation, and you're probably fed up of seeing it, and I would understand that tiredness. But what does it say? The present is made of the past and the future. Do you regret one of your past acts? Are you obsessed with some of your past decisions? Are you constantly thinking about the present? Are you waiting for the future to come? Do you experiment some difficulties to be anchored in the present? If this somehow rings a bell to you, we are about to find a few solutions together through this reflection and conversation. Welcome to the TED Therapy. I would like to go on with something that happened to me before this session. I had a call with my former mentor, a philosopher, and I told him, I'm going to be on TED, I'm stressed, and I have to speak about a complex notion which says change, past, present, future. And right away, without any further notice, he told me, Wilan, wait. That's super interesting. Time is a really, really complex system. It's a system of value, and first of all, it's a system of value which is fleeting and really difficult to apprehend. We kept on talking, exchanging a few glasses of wine, obviously. I went home, and I kept on thinking about what he was saying. Time is a fleeting concept. How is that, actually? How come? And after a few days of reflection, I had the answer. Indeed it is. Time is such a fleeting concept that by the minute I'm pronouncing that sentence, it's already part of the past. And the future is what I think of when I'm thinking about what I'm going to tell you next. You see? So what a complex notion, something which definitely slips out of our grasp. And to apprehend time that is constantly slipping out of our grasp, we're used to representing his three attributes, the present, the past, and the future, through a thin line of points, of dots, similar to those found in space. Remember la Voie lactée? But somehow I question myself. Isn't drawing the axis of time with an arrow a monstrous gesture? We are representing past, present, and future elements of time together on the same timeline, although they cannot coexist together and at the same time. What a paradox. And I would like to go further with this idea. So today, to understand those attributes of time, their interconnectivity, their intuitiveness, I would like to check with you a few assertions that we commonly hear, read in newspaper, and that could explain the idea of a fleeting time. The first assertion that I have in mind is the one which says time is a finite notion. As human beings, we all use watches. We all have a clock at our place. But somehow, that just shows us that we are in some kind of incapacity to control time. We want to do so. We want to segment time with our timeline so that we can anticipate better, move forward, activate our projects. We live in disruptive societies, complex societies, which have basically accepted the notion of change as not being cyclical, as not being repetitive anymore. This is somehow a major rupture with societies from a previous era. I'm thinking of societies from the 9th and the 10th century, which have modeled their functioning around the idea of the solar system. Remember the celestial sphere? So around those societies, there's a new idea stemming from philosophical movement, Hellenism, monotheist confessions, Catholicism, Judaism, even Bantu, Akan, Bambara, cosmogonies from the Western African continent. Namely that time is a succession of events with provide somehow direction. That's really interesting. Time can be split into a succession of events and provide direction. That's a major split. As a consequence, we, as human beings in our centrality, I would say, as a whole, we see ourselves as time builders, time shapers. I would say time freaks actually, controllers. We need that because we are always anticipating and we need to do that timeline. You know that from project management. And this concept is really interesting. Time is fleeting, it's out of our grasp, and we as human beings are able to do the connectivity here, to join the dots. And that allows us to introduce a double notion. The first notion is the notion of progress, and the second one is the notion of change. Progress, we already said it, time allows us to move forward. Change, we no longer fear the breakdown of a cycle. We now hope for it. So those two notions, progress and change, interconnected, they allow us to basically switch from an ideology of repetitiveness, the cycle, towards an ideology of change. But what is change actually? I have a kind of answer to that. I was having a debate with a friend of mine about the idea that time changes and that it changes because we basically see it change. In our centrality, we're able to fetch the changing elements of time. And my friend answered to me, but wait, change is freedom. And I quote him here. He said, I am free, so I can change. And I can change many things. I can change my opinions. I can change my views. I can make different choices. If I want today, I can be in a TED talk. If today or tomorrow I change my mind, I might not be here. I'm a human being, I'm plural. I'm multiple. I'm a changing being. So I am free, so I can change. So change somehow is the acceptance of freedom, and as a consequence, freedom is the right to change. This basically, I would say, revolves around two main mechanisms that we find in our societies nowadays. Remember our complex societies, our stressful societies? The first notion is the notion of market. Market as regards the economy. And the second one is the notion of democracy. Democracy as regards politics. Those two interconnected notions, obviously, have consequences. When it comes to the market society, the first consequence which comes to my mind is precariousness. And as regards the notion of democracy, the consequence that I would like to highlight here is disloyalty. In other terms, if change triggers precariousness, then one can only be loyal to oneself. Obviously, freedom as the right to change is a bit seen as a hollow value. In any society that takes the model of freedom as its own, it might be seen as meaningless. And it brings a lot of negative reactions with it, in the forefront of which lies the idea of eternity, immorality, the quest for eternal life. Somehow, isn't that refusing the idea of change? It amounts to saying that change doesn't exist because time is not cyclical. But some way, in an absurd way, isn't death the most elaborate form of change? Obviously, everything that I'm saying here is nonsensical. It's philosophical. And it would amount, and I would say it would also amount to denying our first conjecture, namely that time is not cyclical. But it doesn't mean that time is linear. It doesn't mean that time is like a segment, like a thin line that we said, either. On the contrary, we will see that those three attributes of time, which are past, present, and future, are the three sides of the same coin. And for that, I would like to quote someone. Unfortunately, I don't know the name of the person who wrote these lines. I found it in a magazine, and it basically said that time is a questionable reality. In French, they would say tout est relatif, but I wouldn't know how to translate that one in proper English. So time is a questionable reality. And this poem says, the past is past. It cannot exist concretely. When it existed concretely, it was called the present. The future doesn't exist concretely either. When it will exist concretely, it will be called present. Okay, first of all, I read it maybe twice, and then I had a kind of headache, and then I had to analyze it. What do we see here? The past is not concrete. The present is not concrete either. And the future, which is supposed to be the sum of the past and the present, will never be concrete. So it is impossible for us to be concretely in the past, the present, and the future. At the same time? Yes, at the same time. But somehow, time is fundamental to human evolution. We can't deny that. It doesn't mean that it is real. When we decide, basically, to grasp its reality, nothing really tangible seems to allow us to fully grasp it, to fully understand its existence. Let's take an example. If I would undress myself, which I'm not going to do because I'm wearing a microphone, not for other reasons, I would put my jacket over there. I would move a bit. I would go out of the circle, come back to the circle, being undressed. And something would have happened in the meantime. My jacket would be there, I would be here. But I haven't changed. Time has changed. In the meantime, what happened? You still notice my presence on the stage, but I know what happened, and you know what happened. Time was fleeting. There was a lapse of time between those two movements. In the meantime, I lost track of my speech, and also I lost a bit of my life expectancy, and you too, by the way. So that doesn't mean that time is real and that we can fully grasp it. What happened in the meantime is something really material. And on a material level, time does appear to have some consistency. Everything is supposed to change. It's not static. We've spoken about the life expectancy, our mindsets, our ideas, our religion. Everything changes. The passing seasons, the place where we used to grow up, we're aging, our facial features. Even this room is maybe about to change after this conference. Okay, I see your smiles. It's not going to become dirtier. We are clean people here. But you see what I mean. It's really difficult to grasp the idea of time and thus grasp the idea of changing times. And that brings me to my next assertion, which is fully well depicted by a quotation taken from the book named The Gift from Vladimir Nabokov. In this book, in his novel, he makes one of his heroes, called Fyodor, says the following: our faulty sense that time is a kind of growth is a consequence of our limited state, which implies its constant ascent between the watery abyss of the past and the aerial abyss of the future. We see a lot of metaphors used here. He uses the idea of an abyss, of an ascent, of the water. All the elements of life are here. The soil, the solid ground, the air, the water, that we also find in general confessions in highly rated religions. But somehow, if we check in between the lines here, we have the traditional opposition between two major concepts. The first one being the one which is protected and highlighted by the proponents of the space-time theory. It basically says that time is a fleeting concept, and that time contains the history of reality, which basically amounts to saying that all the attributes of time, we've seen it, the past, the present, and the future, have segmented, allocated places which never move forever. What a sad theory, to be honest. And this thesis is basically opposed and controversial. It is opposed with the idea of presentism. Presentism is really simple. It's the idea that only present events are real. Only present events are real. And they appear to disappear by being replaced, each one by each other, and so on. And that makes an interesting cocktail, because reality always appears new and fresh to us. But somehow, I'm not totally convinced about this idea, because it would amount to saying that the past and the future don't count, yeah? Being present, always, focusing on the present time, somehow is a bit discriminatory towards the past and the future, yeah? In other words, there's no other reality than what is currently happening. My speech and you being bored. So I have to conclude somehow on those different ideas. And that brings me to the idea that nothing is permanent, except one thing, change. Obvious, yeah? How can change be permanent? It is not, but it is. Per se, if it is the present that counts, then one must live. But how do we live? That's our life question. Every morning, we wake up like this. How do I live? How do I improve? How do I enhance my condition as a human being? How do I enhance my condition for my society, for the people I share the society with? Yeah? How to live. And we already have some kind of answers to that. We all know the proverb which says, "Seize the day, enjoy the moment, carpe diem." That somehow implies granting the present a certain status. But we also need to grant the future a certain status, because as human beings, we are planners. We need that framework of representation to build our project, to basically see the future beforehand so that we can feel some ways of comfort. So I would like to go with 3 takeaways today. The first one is no need to wait for the future or regret the past. It's easy to say, obviously. But if everything is present, everything is current, and then everything is in action. So take action, actually. Take action. That one is doable. The second takeaway is living in the present is not living in the moment. There's a slight difference here. To act is always to continue a certain past, to shape a certain idea of the future. And the last one is only action is anchored in the present. That also seems to be a bit obvious. Actually, action alone can grant the 3 attributes of time, the past, the present, and the future, a certain relevance, without which there would be nothing. So I would say, enjoy yourselves, seize the day, and most of all, don't forget to take action. Thank you for listening to me.